Oh, look at this.
来たぜ。お前らのターゲットが大富豪バッテラだ。
Okay then.
かけたお金も相当高額になってますよね。
ですから愛ですよ。愛する者を独占したいと思うのは当然でしょう。
絶対にジンの手がかりを掴んでみせる。
He'll get it.
今
Oh, it's beautiful. Look at that.
クラピカ。
Okay. Good. Good.
半日も寝ていたのか。
I think you deserved it. You've earned it.
クラピカ。
Ugh.
スクワラが殺されたの。
Hmm.
それでエリザがひどく取り乱しちゃって競り落とした火の目は奴らに奪われてしまったんだけど、ボスはそのことよりエリザの動揺ぶりにショックを受けていた
Oh wow, yeah. Look at that.
それで自分から帰るって言い出して。
今度キラは
二人は元気よ。今頃は
寝ちまったよ。
Wow. Yeah, he needs a lot of rest. Really quite drained.
自分のやるべきことをやってる。
Look at
続い
this.
てこの品、幻のゲームグリードアイランドです。
Look at that.
ご覧の通り、その不思議な力はどんな衝撃からもこのゲーム機を守っているのです。
Mysterious. Yeah.
この
To
中で
to most people,
誰
I
かがプ
suppose.
レイし続けている限り、こ
Whoa.
の方の名はジェイト・サリ。
Kind of looks like
プレイ
me.
ヤーとしてゲーム内に存在しております。我々が入手した時、日本はゲームオーバーとなっておりました。それはプレイヤーの現実での死を意味します。このゲームは死を伴う大変危険なものなのです。覚悟のある方のみご参加ください。
I like her.
それでは9億ジェニーからお願いします。71番さらに倍60億。
兄貴じゃねえか。
Yes, Miluki.
どうやら兄貴の野郎、グリードアイランドのログを解析できなかったらしい。
Oh no, Miluki.
71番255億。
あいついくら持ってんだよ。
Not more than him.
このゲームをクリアすることができるのならばな。
And this is how God and Killua
俺たちハンターなんですけど。
get in on this?
ゲー
Possibly?
ムクリアに協力しますよ。ふざけてないよ。これでもプロハンターなんだ。
何よバカな。ライセンスはあるのかな。
He does, but
いや、ないよ。
yeah, he pawned it.
だからといって君たちの言葉を鵜呑みにはできない。
You have to prove it.
私がハンターを雇ってゲームクリアを目指しているのは事
This is
実。
their end, though. This is it.
現時点で君らを雇うわけにはいかない。プレイ人数が限られているからね。
まずい。作戦失敗か。
Hold on,
ぶ
hold
っちゃ
on.
けゲームは買わなくてもいいと思うんだ。欲しいのはゲームの中の情報。それにグリードアイランドを競り落とした人の中にもきっとプレイヤーを探している人もいると思うんだ。
Okay. Solid plan
プ
indeed.
レイ人数が限られてる。
一つのカードには一人分のデータしかセーブできないんだよ。マルチタップを使い、一つのハードで8人がプレイヤーの上限だ。
But they have a memory
そういえ
card.
ばメモリーカードの30ブロック全部グリードアイランドで埋まってたよね。
なぜそれを？
俺たちグリードアイランドのセーブデータを持ってるんです。データだけ手に入れたんですけど。
だとしたらあれも。もしもそのカードが本物なら、ゲーム機からそのカードを抜くためにもう一つアイテムが必要なんだが。
もしかしてあの指輪か。
This guy knows about it.
知っている。
Of course he does. He seems to be a bit of an
どうやら審
obsessive.
査対象としての資格はあるようだね。
ちょっとレンを見せてもらおうか。
どうだ？
Are they going to make the
ダ
cut
メ
though?
ですね。プレイさせるだけ無駄です。
やっても見ないでなんでわかるの。
やってからじゃ遅いんだよ。
Right, yeah. They have to be sure before they let anyone in.
ならまだいいが、だらだらと延命されるのが厄介でな。あのゲームはプレイヤーが中で生きている限り、リセットもメモリーカードを抜くこともできない。つまり新たなプレイヤーを投入できないのだ。
Yeah, you take up those
私
spots.
が雇ったハンターがプロアマ含めて100名ほどプレイしているが、その半分以上がすでに投げている。 現実世界に戻ることを諦め、ずっとゲームの中で生き延びようとしているのだ。だから新たなプレイヤーは厳選する。
It is quite the escape, I suppose.
最低でも現実に戻れるアイテ
And
ム
bring
を
them back?
入手し、帰還できるだけの力を持つものだ。
現実機関のアイテム入手難度は中の下。だがお前たち程度の年齢は入手どころかすぐにゲームオーバー。審査日はオークション最終日。も
So that gives him
し
some
参加す
time.
る気があるのなら、その間せいぜい念を磨くことだな。
言われなくったってやるよ。行こうキルは。
Oh, look at
ところ
God.
で坊や、そのメモリーカードはどうやって入手したんだ？
教えない。
Good, good.
絶対審査受かってやる。
But calm down, calm down. Get your head in the game.
審査か。どうする？
Yeah, yeah. Checks out.
私たち盗賊盗むに決まってる。
じゃあアジトに戻ってプレイしてみるか。
Oh, I love this. Great
カード
angle.
が一つ刺さってるってことは、あと一人しかプレイできねえぜ。
マルチタップ使うね。これで4人動けね。
どっちが先に行く？
私行くよ。
Right. Yeah, let him go first. He was the one who's interested in it, right?
本当に消えちまった。
何今の。
ゲーム
Hey!
お前らもやらないか。
バス。
気が向いたらな。
Okay, look at that. You got two troop
どん
members
な
in
に
there
や
now.
ったのこれ。
I love his reactions.
ムカつく。言いたい放題言ってくれちゃって。
Relax, relax,
でもな
relax.
あいつが言うのももっともだぜ。そう突っかかるなよ。そろそろ次の段階を考えてもいい頃だってこと。
It's the Hatsu, isn't it? They need to.
初
Ah, here
ク
it
ラピ
comes
カが
then,
念
eh?
を習得したのは俺たちとほとんど同じ時期にもかかわらず、あいつが旅団と対等に戦えるのは
Oh, I'll never forget that moment.
クラピカは旅団に対して無敵に近い能力を得る代わりに命がけのリスクを背負ったんだよね。
俺たちはそうはいかない。
Yeah, it's a bit
リス
extreme.
クは重すぎず軽すぎず、かつ自分の系統に合ってて実践的であり応用の効く、そんな能力を考えるんだ。
That's the challenging bit, though, right? You have to figure it out. Yep, yep.
まあそうなるわな。
It's not easy.
一つずつ行こうぜ。どんな能力にしたいかだな。
ど
This
ん
should
な
be
能力
fun.
にか。
おい、何かあるだろ、漠然とでもさ。
I think Killua
とにかく
probably has a
すごい
better
能力。
idea.
漠然としすぎ。じゃあ
He's
ま
an
ずは
enhancer, after
自
all.
分の系統から考えてみようぜ。ゴンは強化系なんだから、やっぱ何かを強める能力がいいわけだよ。次はお前の何をどう強めるかってことだな。
Miluki's
言
theme.
いたいな。じゃあキルアはどうなのさ。
特
Go
訓
on.
にあるよ。俺は今日から必殺技の特訓に入る。ま、お前はゆっくり考えてろ。もしかしたら審査には俺だけ合格しちゃうかもな。こうして脅しでもしないと。
Yeah.
あいつすぐ横道にそれるからな。自分のオーラと電気を融合するイメー
Ooh.
ジ。
They kind of hinted at it, or kind of alluded to this, based on Zeno and Silva's abilities. Electricity.
次は
Goddamn.
溜めた電力を一気に放電するイメージで念を練る。
Ah, it is.
熱心だな、ゴー。
クラピカ。
Oh,
もういい
look at
の？
him.
ああ、熱は下がった。もう大丈夫だ。
全然大丈夫じゃなさそう。
Yeah, even Gon can tell.
ところで、オークションはどうだった？高価なゲームを狙ってるそうじゃないか。
Oh, look at his eyes.
うん。
プレイヤー先行審査か。
Okay, maybe Karpika
ね
can
え
help
クラピカ
a
は一
bit.
体どんな修行をしたの？
鎖を具現化しようと思ってからは、イメージ修行だな。
Image
目を
training.
つぶって感触を確認したり、
Mm.
何百何千枚と射精したり、ただ眺めてみたり舐めてみたり、音や匂いも。
You've got to know, you've got to live and
鎖で
breathe
遊ぶ以
the
外に何も
chains.
するなと師匠に言われたからな。その幻覚の鎖にやがて重たさや冷たさ、
Ooh,
擦れ
how
合う
cool.
音を感じるようになる。そして自然と具現化した鎖が出せるようになったんだ。
俺の師匠になってよ。
Mm.
クラピカなら的確に悪いとことか指摘してくれそうだもん。
Interesting
これなら
reaction
オ
though,
ークションの
right?
間クラピカをここに足止めできる。
残念だがそれはできない。私のボスが明日にでもここを立つ。立場上ついていかねばな。
Mm.
ヨー
Hey,
クシーンを出る
gig's a
の？
gig, right?
あ、ゴンは誰に念を教わったんだ？私に聞くよ
A
り
great man,
そ
a
の人
great
に聞
man.
いた方がいいんじゃないか。
Oh. Yes!
必殺技か。君たちらしいね。結論から言うと強化系に必殺技は必要ありません。6つの系統の中で最も攻守のバランスがいいからです。
どうしても俺4日後の審査に。
Okay, 4 days. I thought it'd be less than
もし
that.
私が審査員で付け焼き場の必殺技もどきなど見せられたら
うん
失望するでしょう。
Yeah, it's gotta be the real deal, your
いいです
actual.
かゴン君。そのクラピカという人の真似だけは絶対にしてはいけない。
Yeah.
私が理由を言わ
Killua knew this.
その人を見ていればわかるね。
はい。
自分に何ができるかを一つ一つ思い出してみなさい。そうすればおのずと答えは出てきます。
Yeah, he needs a bit more guidance than that.
ヒントお願いヒントをください。
しっかりしろよゴン。もたもたしてっと一気に置いてくぜ。
Oh, there it is.
今日オーラを目に集中して隠れたオーラを見つける。これを閉じれば全て同時にできる。
Ooh.
ちょっと気を抜いただけで全部解けちゃう。でもできる。
Yeah, yeah.
これでもし電で増強したオーラを一箇所に集中したら一体どれだけのパワーが出るんだろう。
何か掴んだな。負けないぜゴン。
Whoa, yeah, it is kind of like lightning, isn't it?
2人は今新たな覚醒の時を迎えていた。
Okay, so episode 59, let's get into it. See, the thing is, I think the ending of the episode is certainly, yeah, it certainly feels like, okay, now it's truly moving on to the next arc, right? It feels like a new chapter, just, you know, the next phase, right? Especially the narration, and, you know, of course, you've got the new ending kind of coming in as well, you know, totally different tone as well, and I like it. But, you know, the thing is, I really kind of like to take in the endings once I can actually, you know, look at the visuals as well. So, of course, at some point, I am going to have my reaction to the ending and my thoughts on the ending, including the visuals, of course. And then, of course, you know, I can go back and check out some of the other endings at this point, right? Those are spoiler-free, I believe. I think maybe the best approach might be to do a bunch of them together at some point rather than, you know, one by one. Yeah, I think that could be fun. And of course, the openings as well. Though, you know, once again, I was told to steer clear of this one as well. Apparently it has a lot of spoilers. So yes, you know, not going to be checking that out until it is safe to do so. But, you know, going back to my point about the ending phase, the conclusion of this episode actually finally kind of truly feeling like, okay, this is it. This is the next phase. You know, you've got the narrator saying things like the two boys are about to undergo a new awakening, right? And they are, you know, essentially it is at that point now, you know, maybe even a little bit ahead of time. I didn't expect them to be this far along as far as Hatsu goes, you know, developing their Hatsu. I mean, you know, Gon is just now kind of cracking the code, right? Just now he's able to kind of figure it out, right? He saw that, okay, even though he wasn't able to maintain it, you know, all that long, he now knows, okay, it's possible. He was able to pull it off, right? And, you know, instead of focusing all of that aura into his eyes or through his eyes for Gyo, you know, he figured out, okay, you can do that with, you know, a body part as well, right? It's really quite reminiscent of someone like Uvogin, right? And it makes sense. You know, Gon is an enhancer. And, you know, I think I even speculated all that time ago that, okay, you know, this could be maybe a bit of a preview to how Gon might actually function as an enhancer down the line. But then, of course, you've got Killua, right? Our transmuter, who clearly had this idea. He had this, you know, thought for some time now, right? He was kind of more focused on Gon, right? Helping Gon out because he knew it's going to be a challenge, and it is a challenge. But, you know, the thing I really love here is that Gon got to do it by himself, right? And of course, you know, you have Killua who kind of understood this, right? He knew, okay, I have to leave, and I have to give him a bit of a scare, or, I have to give him some incentive here, right? He's got to do it himself. He'll figure it out, right? I've got to kind of light a fire under him almost. But he knew that, okay, Gon is going to be able to crack this at some point. He had belief. See, the thing I love about Killua's growth is that he completely understands Gon, right? Or at least really quite a bit, right? Perhaps the most since Mito-san, right? Mito-san and the grandma, I suppose. In Killua, you have someone who truly understands how Gon functions, how he thinks, right? The things that might be, challenging for him, the things that might be, roadblocks for him, but how to kind of help him get over it as well. But yeah, essentially Killua had a solid idea in place already as far as his Hatsu goes, right? So he's certainly a bit further along. And I'll come back to the Hatsu aspect of it in a bit. I kind of want to focus on the ending. Again, like I said, the ending, that finally truly made it feel like, okay, now I'm moving on from, the York New City arc, right? Because I'll be honest, a solid chunk of this episode, the beginning of this episode even, I found it a little bit difficult to kind of get out of that mindset all of a sudden, because I've spent so much time at this point dialed into the York New City arc, the Phantom Troop angle, the Kurapika angle, all of that, and the tone of it as well. This is quite the sudden tonal shift, and that's not something new. I've had that before, but this tonal shift, this transition, perhaps this is the one that's been a bit jarring, or the most jarring, I suppose, so far. Right? Again, I think it's understandable given the arc I'm just coming off of and the episode I'm coming off of, right? It's night and day, right? I mean, even within the York New City arc, there is an episode, or there is a transition that is kind of similar to this, actually. It is the episode right after the Uvogin and Kurapika fight, the encounter under the iconic Scarlet Moon, right? The next one is the introduction of Zepile. I get to meet Zepile, and then, of course, there's a bit of a focus on that side of it, right? Gon and Killua getting to learn about all of that stuff, right? Bidding on these items, and, learning some of the tricks of the trade from Zepile. So, that's quite the tonal shift within the arc itself, right? This is kind of similar, I'd say, right? Going from that last episode, an incredible episode, one of the best of the series as well, right? One of the most impactful episodes of the series, to this episode. So yeah, essentially perhaps the first half of the episode, I was still kind of in York New City mode, right? My mindset, it was still kind of there, I still kind of had thoughts of that in my mind. But then, perhaps near the conclusion of this episode, and then the actual conclusion of this episode, actually, it finally got me in that mindset that, okay, now it is the next chapter. I am moving on. I have to move on, right? Because the story is moving on proper at this point, right? And yeah, something about the idea of Gon and Killua now moving on to the next step, to the next phase as these young men, right? Trying to, navigate through these really interesting experiences that they are having, and they should be having at that age, right? I love that for them. And, I'm really quite excited and intrigued by the lessons and the experiences that do come out of Greed Island for Gon and Killua. And then, of course, you've got a bit of the supporting cast as well. You've got, of course, at this point, Finks and Phaeton that are a part of this, right? And then, of course, the others are there as well. I believe 6 of them. So it kind of checks out, right? If you look at Hisoka's fortune, right? 6 pages remain. You've got Phaeton, Finks, Machi, Franklin, Shizuku, and Shalnark. That is 6. 6 pages remain, right? And 2 of them are in Great Island already. They're physically gone at this point, right? Phaeton and Finks. They made it a point to show us that. Of course, there's a lot of Nen that's a part of this. Even the showcase, right? The console that had the memory card in it, right? Of course, it's all men, right? And of course, in the audience, there's probably maybe like a 50-50 or 60-40, maybe 70-30 split in terms of the amount of people that know, okay, this is Nen, and the amount of people that have no idea, right? But again, the host calls it mysterious power, I believe, right? For the ones that don't know. Hell, she might not even know. Maybe she does. Maybe she does. She is in quite the position. But yeah, in terms of the Phantom Troop still being a part of this and actually being part of the Greed Island arc, the thing I really like here is that, now that it's essentially confirmed that Kurapika is departing, right? He is not going to be part of this, essentially. And, I think ultimately that is the right choice at this point. I think, Kurapika, maybe it is a time for him to kind of take a break from the Phantom Troop, like, in terms of the context of the story itself. And then perhaps even for us, the audience, it is quite the major focus on Kurapika, the York New City arc. So a break is perhaps the best thing at this point. Right. So, I think that's fine. But Leorio, on the other hand, is the one I'm still kind of thinking about in terms of, okay, do I really want him to be gone again? I mean, he makes an appearance in this episode as well, of course, Melody as well. And, you've got a few cameo appearances as well. Milky finally shows up. Of course, he's really stressed. He thought maybe he could hang in there, but no, this tycoon, whose name I think might have been mentioned, and it might have been mentioned in relation to Miluki, right? If you go back a few episodes, quite a few episodes at this point, it's back at home, back at the Zoldyck estate in his room. I think it was mentioned then, right? It was. Yeah, I think it was mentioned, right? Miluki came across the name. He came across an article, I believe. But yeah, Miluki himself does not have that type of money, right? He could not go toe to toe, and he loses out. So yeah, in my mind, I was really, really kind of building up the reintroduction of Miluki. I mean, more so in a comedic sense, perhaps. I'm not saying that, I was expecting it or hoping for it to be something grand or anything, but it'll be interesting to see if that's all. If Miluki I get to see, if he's going to be around for the next episode or two. It remains to be seen how much longer Gon and Killua are going to be on the outside, because of course they'll make it inside of the game. Maybe by the end of the next episode or the beginning of the episode after that, maybe by episode 61. I do kind of expect Gon and Killua to be inside of Greed Island proper. But yeah, going back to my point about the Phantom Troop still being a part of this, at least two of them at this point, though I can see someone like Sharnark being interested in this. I mean, you see his reaction, especially someone who is into tech. In Sharnark, I can see him maybe wanting to go in there. I mean, I'm sure others could show up as well. But the thing that excites me about the Phantom Troop members still being here, at least a handful of them, is that it kind of allows for a different dynamic now that Kurapika is not going to be part of the picture, now that the chain user is not part of the equation, right? It allows for maybe a bit more of a lighthearted or more of a fun, interesting dynamic between, Gon and Killua and the Phantom Troop. I'm sure, they are going to come across each other at points. So yeah, the thought of that is really quite exciting to me. And, the fact that the Phantom Troop is still a part of this arc, or is meant to be a part of this arc, it does kind of help bridge the gap, doesn't it? But also looking at it from their perspective, I know that, Phaeton's been interested in a copy of the game. He's been interested in Greed Island since the beginning of this arc, right? Since the Gathering of Heroes. They've alluded to it. But now, you still kind of have to think about, a lot of the speculation I had from the discussion from the last episode, right? The next steps for the Phantom Troop. It's not as if they're just going to forget everything that happened. It's not as if they'll just forget about Chrollo, who's headed east, right? I'm sure that is still, on their mind. I'm sure they'll be thinking of the next steps in terms of how to help Chrollo. Right, I'm sure it's not just going to be them completely forgetting about everything and, being a part of Greed Island for a fun time, a bit of a break. I'm sure there's a lot of fun moments ahead of me, but I'm sure, they'll still be thinking about the Phantom Troop as a whole, the Spider as a whole, the leader, Chrollo, all of that. I'm sure they'll be thinking about that as well, right? How to potentially help him. But, going back to my initial point about, Gon and Killua and their journey in this arc, and the things they might learn, right? The character progression and all of that, I'm really quite excited for that, because each arc so far has served its purpose in terms of, character arcs and character progression. And of course, it has its ups, it has its downs, right? And that's life. That's life. And I'm sure there's going to be more of that in Greed Island. So yeah, it'll be interesting to be sitting here by the end of this arc and really kind of, reflecting on the growth of Gon and Killua, the things they've learned, the experiences they've had, the trajectory that they are going to be on from that point on, right? I'm sure within the Greed Island arc, they are going to be setting up the next arc as well, right? They have a knack for that. Or I say they, Togashi has a knack for that. He's just fantastic at that, isn't he? Now, of course, one of the major aspects of this episode is Gon and Killua's Hatsu, right? Finally kind of, going into that territory, taking that next step. So, of course, that's an exciting moment for sure. But, I've got to say, at this point, I'm a little bit more fascinated by just the concept of Greed Island, right? Because now in this episode, there's some really interesting exposition, some really interesting detail that comes out right through some of these newly introduced characters. Though of course the tycoon is mentioned before, at least his name. Yeah, it's fascinating. Listen, see, the thing is, I've mentioned before that, of course I do want to experience an isekai anime at some point, and there's a few highly rated ones that, that I could check out at some point. They are a part of my list, my watch list. But it looks like Hunter x Hunter might actually be my first isekai experience anyways, right? Because yeah, it's kind of the same concept, isn't it? Right? Getting transported to a different world. Now, again, I say that loosely. I don't have the details on that just yet. I mean, they've certainly established some really, definitive rules. You can die, right? You die in there, you die in real life. The thing I really kind of want to link this to is Christopher Nolan's Inception. To be even more specific, lucid dreaming. Because I certainly had my phase, my lucid dreaming phase, and it was a solid 3 or 4 months, as far as trying to make it happen, as far as, using all of these tricks that you kind of read about, right? And there's that scene as Kurapika is explaining his training, right? His image training, right? And I love the presentation of, the chibi Kurapika as well, right? Kind of depicting or showcasing all the things that he did. And I love that. Even though it is kind of showing us after the fact, of course, Kurapika put in all the work. He put in a lot of time. And, that scene and him describing all the things about the chains, right? The physical touch, the taste of it, the sound of it and all of that, that scene kind of reminded me of some of the, the tips and tricks that are meant to be helpful in becoming lucid, during lucid dreaming. Listen, I know this is a bit of a tangent perhaps, but I feel like, yeah, it kind of relates, at least to me or for me, because it kind of reminded me of that. They tell you to do things like, look at the clock almost immediately, look at the time almost immediately, once you wake up, right? Touch is a big thing, right? They recommend that you always kind of touch, you knock on things, right? Touch the walls, knock on the table, knock on just stuff around you, kind of feel your arm, that kind of thing. Listen, I know it might sound a little bit strange, but these are just kind of like the bullet points. I spent a lot of time really getting into lucid dreaming. And yes, I did accomplish lucid dreaming, but the thing is, it only really happened once for me. And it was just kind of this sudden burst, and the excitement kind of takes over. And so much so that, you just kind of wake up. But, I became lucid. I did become lucid for a moment in time, I suppose. And it was just bizarre. It was exciting, exhilarating. It was, just kind of thinking about it again, and that phase I was kind of going through, it has me kind of excited all over again, if I'm being honest. But, in terms of the isekai elements of Greed Island, I have to remember that, this actually could be a real place, right? I think I even speculated this back around the time Gon and Killua go back to Gon's home, right? That, hell, I think I even speculated that, could that be Jing on Greed Island, right? So, that's certainly a strong possibility. I think that's a really realistic possibility. And the thing is, they've actually already kind of shown us this kind of concept, something that could be similar, perhaps. it's back around the time Gon and Killua are trying to gain information, right? And they get pulled into the hunter database, right? The licensed hunter database that only licensed hunters have access to, and it's that bar setting, right? And there's a bartender. That was an actual place, right? But yeah, going back to my point about being really quite fascinated by some of the newly introduced elements of Great Island, one of the characters, or at least the situation this character might be in, is one of the standouts for the episode for me, because, I can't stop thinking about it. I can't. And I'm speaking of the tycoon and the interest that he's taken in Great Island. Apparently he spent a lot of money on it already, right? And he's still going strong, right? He'll spend any amount of money to beat out anyone else to get a copy, or get as many copies as possible. And I think he said something like, isn't it normal or isn't it natural to monopolize something that you love, right? I think he said something along those lines in response to the reporter. And, the reporter said something interesting. There's a lot of rumors going around about this love aspect of it, or the expression of love aspect of it, right? I don't know, this aspect of it, this tycoon, all of a sudden, something about him and his motives are really quite fascinating to me, or really quite interesting to me. Because, the thing is, you see these types of characters, or this character archetype in stories. It can be in anything, film, live action shows, anime, books, all of that, gaming. You've got these, filthy rich people, again, a tycoon in this case, that have unlimited funds, unlimited supply of money, right? All the money in the world. But, sometimes, or in a lot of these cases, in a lot of these stories, all the money in the world is sometimes not enough. Sometimes it's just not about the money, right? You can spend all the money that you have and you still might not get the thing that you want most. Of course, money can be a game changer, especially that amount of money. Of course, right? It can do a lot of things for a person. A lot of things, right? Almost a limitless amount of things. But there's always, right, in a lot of these types of cases, or these characters, or mini, character arcs, there's always something that it cannot do for you, right? And that's a feeling I was getting from this man, right? There's this desperation about him. At times there'll be a focus, a tight shot of his eyes, on a few occasions actually, right? Especially upon finding out that, okay, these children, these young men, can I call them young men at this point? I called them young men earlier in the discussion, Gon and Killua, that they do know about, Greed Island. They know quite a bit. They know about the ring as well. They know about the memory card and all of that. So yeah, there's something about him that I do find fascinating, or specifically rather, his motives, right? That I think is going to be exciting for me, at least. I've really kind of latched onto that. Apparently this tycoon has hired around 100, professional and amateur hunters. But the thing is, about half of them have given up. He specified that they've given up on returning to the real world, right? And that they are choosing to live inside of the game. So see, of course, the verbiage there is interesting, especially given the point I was just making a few moments ago about, okay, this possibly could be an actual place. I mean, hell, I think there's a really good chance it could be an actual place. But again, the things that this man, this tycoon, is saying have to be taken into account, right? He's got the most experience out of all, because it certainly looks like he's learned everything there is to learn about this. He's hired so many people at this point. You've even got this other guy, who's he's been there, done that, and he plans on going back in as well after the screening. So there is that concept of some of these pro or amateur hunters going in there for one purpose, but then deciding that no. I suppose, after experiencing that world, inside of Greed Island, deciding, no, okay, I'd rather stay in here, or, kind of gave up on trying to get out and just decided, okay, I'll spend the rest of my life in here, right? That is some decision. But there's also the possibility that a bunch of them actually go in there, kind of lying about their intentions, but they go in there for that purpose specifically, to stay in there. Right, kind of brings in that isekai element, starting life all over in a different place, in a different world that is perhaps a little bit different than their own. And then of course they specify that as long as a player is in the game, you cannot remove the memory card, right? So they really have to be really quite picky about the people they send from this point on, right? So yeah, for that reason, of course, at that point, Gon and Killua are not really quite up to standard. But in terms of the tycoon's motives, there is a bit of insight, right? There is a bit of insight. The eyebrow guy, he said that they need people who are strong enough to obtain these items. And apparently, the items are relatively easy to obtain, but they need people that are strong enough to obtain those and return to the real world, right? Bring those essentially to the real world. So there's certain items there that this tycoon has his eyes set on, right? That he needs for some purpose that he's really dead set on, has been dead set on, right? He's pumped a lot of money into this and he continues to do so. So yeah, he essentially needs people to complete the game, right? That's the gist of it, I believe, right? Complete the game and, bring these items. And I mean, I'm sure these items are going to be really quite special, or at least really quite special to this tycoon. The thing is, this old man, this old tycoon is kind of reminding me of something. It's reminding me of the Man in Black, Ed Harris's character from Westworld. There could be something like that at play, that perhaps, I have to be careful about spoilers. I kind of really want to, link this to this. Spoiler alert, perhaps for the next 30 seconds or so. Okay, I'm going to get into it now, folks. Okay. So essentially there is a possibility that this tycoon, maybe as a younger man, right, has been, in Greed Island. He's been there. He's possibly had his experiences there, right? And now maybe for some reason he's not able to go in there or chooses not to go in there, but he still needs something out of it, right? There could be something like that at play. I think the one thing that's clear is that he certainly needs something out of it. But yeah, the idea, the concept of, like half of these people that are hired to go in there not returning. Yeah, it's an interesting setup for sure, right? As far as, people trying to escape their lives, right? And, actually looking at Greed Island as a chance to start all over, right? A chance at a better life, at a different life to, escape certain things. It could be a bunch of different reasons for a bunch of different people that decided to stay in there. But before I move on from this, I think something significant that is a part of this is Gon, right? Gon specifically and his reactions to kind of being turned down, right? Being told that, they're not ready for this. They're not quite at that level. He's really, really quite reactive, isn't he? Noticeably so. I'm telling Gon to, calm down a bit. He's really got to calm down. And then you've got Killua saying, you've got to chill out a bit, right? There's quite an emotional reaction, right? Emotional outburst. And he's really quite reactive in those moments, right? So, that is something to keep in mind. And, they've alluded to this in past episodes or past story arcs in this anime. So yeah, once again, this is something that needs to be pinned, right? I am putting a pin in this. Let's see. But yeah, let's shift the focus to Gon and Killua's Hatsu, right? The thing is, even though, Gon felt that, okay, maybe Kurapika can be my new master, and he asked him that, though of course Gon was also hoping to, kind of kill two birds with one stone, right? Kind of trying to, he was trying to keep Kurapika occupied, right? Get his mind off of things, right? Because he was concerned about the spider still being in town. But ultimately, it didn't really need to go down that path because Kurapika had to accompany his boss, right, Neon. She had a bit of a moment, perhaps a bit of a core moment, learning experience for Neon as well, right? Perhaps she'll learn from this quite a bit and grow up. The thing is, I'm not even sure if she's realized yet if her abilities are gone. In that time, has anyone actually kind of, asked Light Nostrada to, use her abilities, paid them to use her abilities or anything? Though, again, it hasn't been that long, right? All of this is happening really over the span of a day or two, right? Some of the things that just happened recently. But, the thing I really liked here is that Kurapika implores Gon to get in contact with his Nen teacher, his actual master, who started all of this for him. And of course, it's lovely to have Zushi and Wing make that cameo, right? And it's integral. It really is, because it kind of gives Gon the right push, or gives him a push in the right direction. He needed a bit of guidance, right? He needed a bit more than, believe in yourself and remember the things you've learned, right? And ultimately he does that as well, right? He comes to that conclusion as well, right? He goes through kind of step by step all the things he learned in Heaven's Arena, and he does eventually land on Gyu, right? The concept of that, but then, kind of redirecting it to a different component, not a component, a different part of his body instead of his eyes, right? And, and he's reminded that, enhancers don't really need special abilities, right? You've got Killua, who certainly has quite a bit of, character, right, to his specific ability, right? His transmuter ability to incorporate, electricity, right? Again, this didn't feel like that much of a shock. It didn't feel like, oh, this is really, really something quite surprising. It really isn't. Even in Heaven's Arena, he actually beat that one guy, and he lets him kind of believe that all of that all of that charge running through his body is doing a number on him. But no, as a trained assassin, it's something he's used to, right? So yeah, it's not a surprise that this ended up being his specialty. It's him essentially transmuting his aura into the properties of electricity, right? But yeah, going back to my point about enhancers, or the point that is being made to Gon about enhancers, or reiterated rather, is that, it's the most balanced, right? It's one of the reasons Kurapika was hoping to be an enhancer, right? Because it strikes a perfect balance between offense and defense. And, Kurapika felt that that's really quite the perfect, foundation for his goals, his motives, right? The task at hand, his path of vengeance and all of that. But of course, Kurapika learned, and he found something that was really, really quite personal to him, and really quite effective. Right. Though, of course, this is not the path Gon and Killua could really take. So given Gon's base as an enhancer, all he really truly has to do here is to master his Ten and Ren. Right. And that should be strong enough to kind of be considered a special ability. Again, it's really quite reminiscent of Uvogin, right? His big impact attack or ability. And yeah, at the end of the day, Gon is able to make that breakthrough by himself, right? He is able to focus all of that Ren into his fist, right? And suppress everything else that's leaking. So all of that is being directed straight to his fist, right? And he's excited about actually trying this out. And yeah, before I sign off, Leorio, I love that you kind of get to see Leorio's bedside manner, right? And how he handles his friend in that moment. Kurapika needs a lot of rest. I mean, he's not going to be at full strength or 100% anytime soon. He still needs days, I think, a few more days of this, essentially. You see it all over his face, the way he walks. Yeah, he's really quite drained, and, understandably so, given everything he's been through and his abilities as well, right? You kind of have to go all the way back to even the encounter with Uvogin, right? Emperor time and all of that. Is that still kind of at play, right? It must have done a number on his body, and that still could be at play, right? The cost of it, the effects of it, the aftermath of it, right? There's always a cost. But yeah, I think that should do it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access to the next 5 episodes at this point, or full opacity or timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page, and potentially supporting the channel as well. The links are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 60. Nice. Until then, take it easy.